Morning, everyone, and welcome to the Leicestershire and Rutland Safer Communities Strategy Board. Item 1 is introductions. I think most of you know everyone else, so I'm Deborah Taylor. I chair this meeting. So if we go on to item 2, the minutes of the previous meeting on pages 3 to 8, is there any
meetings on meetings?
And she has complained.
Sorry, can everyone who's just joined just mute themselves? Thank you. Okay, so is there any items of accuracy that anyone wants to pick up from the previous meeting? No, so we're happy to accept those minutes. Okay, on to item 3, matters arising. I didn't pick anything up on any matters arising. Is there anything else that anyone wants to pick up? No? Okay, we move on to the LRSC SB action log. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my agenda up. I haven't quite managed to do that yet.
Can I just mention the issue with Bob Byrne while we're on this? Obviously, we were hoping Bob would be able to join this meeting and present his report. Hopefully you've all received the report. So it's not on the agenda for today. The reason why he's had to miss the meeting is because I understand there's MARAC meeting taking place today. He sent me a list of all the MARAC meetings for next year. And it doesn't look like there's any clashes with safer communities, because if there had been clashes, I would have offered to move the meetings. Yeah. But there doesn't seem to be any clashes. So in theory, hopefully Bob will be able to attend some meetings. But you never know what crops up.
Yeah, I suppose if he's unable to do it, we need to probably look, see if there's another rep that he could probably send, because I think it's quite important at the moment that they're involved, and they are sort of missed a few, haven't they? So we'll deal with that outside the meeting. Okay, on to item 5. Any declarations of interest from anybody? No. Okay, we'll move on to item 6. So the Office of Police and Crime Commissioner update. Saj, are you taking us through this?
Yeah.
Okay, over to you.
I'm just going to paraphrase the main elements of this, if that's okay, Chair. The main aspects that we want to cover is basically safer streets. It's pretty much done. In Melton, the team have been fantastic in supporting us. The only thing that's outstanding is Street Vibe Youth Intervention, which will naturally conclude on its own. So it's on a schedule which will come to a close in March 2025, but everything else has been done, and they've done it well ahead of schedule as well. So they did a really good job in terms of supporting us. So a real big thanks to David and his team there. It's a similar case over in Obi and Wigston as well. The team have been fantastic. The only thing that we have outstanding is the cocooning of up to about 1,300 homes. The target itself has been ambitious to try and get 1,300 homes cocooned. We've got up to 1,100. We also held an event, I think it was covered in the police and crime panel meeting itself. We had a target hardening up to about 400 homes. We've almost doubled that. I think the last check I did, I think we're up to about 740 homes. So there's about 700 plus homes that have been given CCTV cameras and items, some real high value items. The turnout for the event that we held out on the 15th of November was immense. We had over 400 people turn up. We had people lining up for over 2 hours, basically, and it went into the late evening. And the feedback we got from it was really, really positive as well. And Rupert had heard similarly. So real success in that sense. And the cocooning, we've got already started to make plans in terms of how we're going to wrap that up. So we're going to have some of the volunteers who have been really brilliant in supporting us with Melanie Smith from the force, basically wrap that up, hopefully by about January, February time. And that's effectively it. All the other interventions have been delivered. We've got a commissioner safety funding round. So we people may be aware of this. We open up a funding round of up to 10K. Sometimes about 3 times a year, and we've got one open that's currently running. That'll run until I believe the 6th of January, if memory serves me. So if there's any small, I say small, the round is primarily always trying to target grassroots organisations. Those are the ones we try and help, but we do have big organisations applying as well. But there's a specific criteria this time that's trying to allow the smaller organizations to apply. And that's, if I remember correctly, I think it's something along the lines of any organizations that have 30 or more staff, they wouldn't be eligible. So it just helps us trying to help the smaller ones, like say parish councils, for example, trying to actually access this funding. So that will be running until the 6th of January, and that's up to about £10,000. Those are the main things I would say. I think the other things is the fact that obviously as we approach the end of the financial year, we still have the CSP budget at the moment. I last tracked it about 180,000 that needs to be spent across all of LLR. I have sent an email out to partners basically saying please try and spend your money. Yeah, it just prevents, obviously, it just kind of, if there's huge underspends every year by any particular area, I think it just kind of forces the question of that being examined. And obviously there's always stuff that the CSPs can use the money on, so we're trying to basically just encourage them to try and use that. I've had some trouble in terms of getting quarterly returns from partners, and I have chased as well, so that's something that I just need to flag. Every time obviously we give money to the CSPs, they're meant to basically give us quarterly returns. I'm not going to name any specific ones, but please, I just kind of emphasize the fact that if we've given you money, obviously we want to know what's happening with that money, and we need to kind of see how those projects are coming along. And and those returns are crucial for us, particularly for meetings like the police and crime panel, because we obviously need to feed back to other members that actually here, as well as the police and crime panel, in terms of how these projects are going and what work is actually being undertaken and how it actually overlaps with the police and crime plan. And that's the last thing I wanted to highlight. The police and crime plan is also out as well. You can see that on our OPCC website. I'm sure Rupert's basically sent an email, as well as our chief exec. But those are the main things, Chair. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thanks, Ed. I think the Safer Streets stuff has been really good. Do we know if there's any further Safer Streets funding, or did the OPCC decide not to bid for the next?
We will, I think, if there is funding, we will always try and bid for it. Sometimes the conditions under which the conditions are based on OPCC offices applying, but sometimes they're specific in terms of it can be the local district councils. It varies. So I know I think it's around Safer Streets round 4, I think it was, that it said it was open to either. So sometimes we've just let the councils basically apply for it, and we've kind of we've been outside that. But I have asked the question, and they've said that their actual response was, we're going to evaluate the current round, and then we'll let you know. But I would assume that there will be in some form or another at some point.
Okay, and I'll just reiterate what you said about the CSE partnerships and that getting their reports in and their bids in as soon as possible, because they're at risk of losing funding, aren't they, if they don't do that, because they obviously don't need the funding, and if they're not delivering projects, then that can go to other areas that are prepared to do that. So just that plea from me as well to make sure you do that. Just another question for me, then I'll go to the hands that are up. Just the performance, the data that's going to go to the CSPs. What it just says problem profiles. I'm just digging in a little bit. What does that actually mean? What sort of data is going to be shared?
So from the discussions I've had, so that's being handled by our performance and governance team. So that's Lizzie Starr and our performance analyst, Christian Dean. So what we're trying to do is, as you know, we would give data packs, and then these data packs would often be read by the NPA commanders, and then talk about what's going on in the area and I suppose what they're doing in response to it. And what we're trying to do with the problem profiles is basically trying to identify priorities in each area and say, look, these are the main issues that are cropping up in your area. So it might be like, for example, the top 3 priorities or the top 5 priorities, and give the evidence for that. And then what we're hoping to try and do is encourage them to use their funding, or a certain percentage of their funding, based on these priorities. Because at the moment, I mean, for the most part, CSPs do know their local issues and stuff, but sometimes the things that they want to spend the money on doesn't necessarily always overlap with, I suppose, the promises we're making through the police and crime plan. So what we're hoping is, if we can start identifying the top 3 priorities for, I don't know, Leicester or Blaby or whoever, we then say, right, because the data says these are your main issues, and this actually aligns with the priorities we're setting as well. We want to see a certain percentage of your funding used up. It's still really early work, so the thinking behind it is the problem profiles will go out in the next few months, but they won't. The expectation to try and shape the usage of the funding, I don't think it'll be next year. It'll probably be the following year after that. That's my understanding of it from the discussions I've had. So yeah, that's
okay. That's helpful. Thank you. Christine.
Mine was one to sort of perhaps help people who've come to this since Safer Streets started. Could you explain what cocooning and target hardening are, please?
sure, absolutely, Councillor Wise. So there's some overlap between the two, but like cocooning items are generally given to homes that are near houses that have been burgled. So it'll be to include basically increase just general home security. There is a specific definition between the definition that separates the two, but I couldn't tell you exactly what. But the items are almost very similar. So with the cocooning items, they gave things like I think like some sort of forensic kits where you could kind of mark certain items, like high value items in your home. So if they've got stolen, then obviously it becomes easy for the police to track. They had window and door alarms. It had things like segment timers as well. But then the target hardening had elements of that as well, but it was just at a higher grade. So the target hardening element that we covered included things like CCTV cameras in addition to some of those cocooning items as well. So yeah, so we gave out things like video doorbells. I mean, the target, say for example, in Oadby was only 400, but because we were just efficient and we were able to kind of negotiate a cheaper price with the provider as well. And we didn't hire an external company to go out and do the deliveries. Staff within the OPCC, myself, as well as many others, basically literally went out and did over 300 houses. So this was outside our normal function. And then we held this event on the 15th. To give out these video doorbells as well. So there's similarity, but the way to think about it is the target hardening element. It was more focused on areas that had areas and houses that had been burgled more so, and cocooning was just a bit of a scattergun approach, basically, more than anything. Yeah.
Thank you. And Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, my question's around the 180k CSP underspend or projected underspend. Does that relate to, is it £180,000 that has not been bid for from the districts, or does it include bids that have not yet been spent? So the last quarterly return reported, for example, only a percentage of the funding's been spent. Is it 180k that has not been bid for at all, or is partway through being spent?
So that's a constantly evolving number. So at this point in time, because obviously we still have a number of months to go until the end of the financial year. So at this moment in time, if you ask me what money is left, I will say to you 180k. Now that number will probably change in the next couple of weeks, because I know from discussions with some of the areas, they are bids that they want to put in here and there. So that number will consistently decrease as we approach the end of the financial year. And then the question is, what is that number going to be when we get to February? So the deadline I've given everyone for their bids is the end of February, a month before the end of the financial year. And the reason for that is, and it's the same thing we did last year as well. The reason for that is I need to start getting an idea of what our financial figures are like, because Kira, our financial officer, needs to know as well for her carryover budget. So we can't leave it until the last minute, say end of March, to kind of settle on a figure. I have to kind of give a bit of a date beforehand to try and get everyone to use their money. And that date I've sent out to everyone is the end of February. And I've basically said, use all your money up if you can, please, before the end of February, get your bids in. And I know there's probably equipment purchases people want to purchase. There's probably all sorts, even if it's like target hardening measures that they want to roll out themselves in each area. There's money that they need to try and use up. But yeah, it's just the fact that that's where we're at the moment. Come the end of the financial year, that number will be very different. I think there probably will be an underspend, because obviously I look at how fast are people using their money and how much time is left. And realistically, if we've got about 3.5 months left, you're not going to do any grand projects in 3.5 months that are going to use huge amounts of money. So if you're an area that has, say, 30, 40 grand, unless you're probably spending it on capital costs and stuff like actual hard equipment, it's going to be very difficult to try and use up that money. So I think that figure will probably be around, and don't quote me on this, please, but I think we're looking at probably around 100 grand, maybe around that region, give or take, it'll probably settle on. Now, whether that'll be redistributed next year, because as you know, that's what we did last year. We topped up everyone's budget and everyone ended up with more money than they've ever had because we were able to save that money. I don't know, because I think there's other factors in play here, which is like our budget as well, our overall budget, and whether there's any particular cuts. I think that's a possibility. And if that happens, it might be a case of maybe next year everyone gets their normal budget as they normally would, but there may not be that underspend that's redistributed because that money is needed elsewhere because of cuts we're potentially going to get on some other contracts. So I don't know for certain, but it's just something that is in play, I think, that you need to be aware of.
Thank you. Gurjit.
Thank you, Chair. Saj, thanks for that. That's really helpful. We've had conversations about this before, but I just wanted to raise it here in terms of whether it's something we can progress through this board. So there are times when certainly I've come to you or members of the community safety team at the county about projects across LLR or across the county. If all districts and boroughs and Rutland are in support. So, for example, sanctuary accommodation. So the OPCC no longer funds sanctuary accommodation. I understand that funding is tight, but districts and boroughs are keen to have something like that. Now, the issue is that the response we get back is, well, you've got to talk to each district and borough and get their commitment and sign up. Is there not a more straightforward way of doing that, some sort of forum like this board, or some way that the OPCC can lead that rather than kind of putting it onto other agencies? So just that, I guess what I'm saying is you've got this underspend. You're saying it's highly unlikely that it could be spent in 3.5 months. Actually, it could, because there are pieces of work across certainly LLR or across Leicestershire and Rutland that we could progress and get in place very quickly. But it's the best way and the quickest way to get that moving forward.
Oh boy, that's probably a question that's above my head, if I'm honest, Gurjit. I think like it's something that needs agreement, probably from my senior management level, and I'm just thinking of it from the logistics of it, the way the funding would, like when I draw down funding for each area has their own specific budget code that we tap into. It's not like a general pot that we can just dip into to give outside of those 9 CSPs. So each CSP is actually allocated their budget. And that's why I think this is where I probably have a bit of difficulty. And I had the same problem, I think, with the ASB training. It's rigid in the sense that I could only use those 9 areas. And then I have to kind of ask the question, whose budget are we using? I can't just take a little bit out of each one like that. It doesn't work like that in terms of our systems, like our aggressor when I'm drawing it down. And I think I'll be hesitant, I think, to start going outside and going a bit rogue in terms of how I start drawing a bit here, a bit there, I think, because I think I'd probably get asked questions about that. So that's why I think it probably needs an agreement, and it's probably going to need to be above my head. I don't think I could potentially authorize or agree anything like that. It might be with Siobhan, maybe if we sit down and say, look, we want to probably create a process that allows the county council, for example, with agreement from other areas to draw down a certain percentage of the budget. How do we go about doing this? But I wouldn't know what the process for that would be outside of the rigid way in which we draw money through our finance system, if that makes sense. It's just I wouldn't know how to do it, I think, without some sort of official agreement, and then me being given like a budget and project code to actually then use that money. Without those things, I can't just draw money and give it out.
Okay, is it something we could probably look at outside of this meeting, Saj, with whoever needs to have that discussion?
Yeah, I don't think it's an impossible ask or nothing like that. I think it's just a case we need a process. I think the thing that's lacking there is probably just some sort of agreed process that says, right, because the way the CSPs work is I have 9 budget codes, 9 project codes, and every time I draw money, I know exactly how to draw it. But yeah, but there's no, I wouldn't know how to start going outside of this, because I have the finance team that use the budget codes that I've used to track what I've spent, and then obviously do their projections as well. So if I suddenly start going outside of that, I think it just causes all sorts of issues for Kira and Hayley as well. So I think that's why I think that there's a missing process here. I don't think it's difficult. I think we just need to probably agree something, and then obviously I just need to know what the process is and what project codes and things, because every now and then I'll have one of our directors say, right, we need to pay this organization, here's the project and budget codes, and this is the amount, and here's the contract, and then I have everything I need to kind of put it through. It's just we don't have anything like that set up for this, basically.
Okay, shall we take that offline then, Gurjit, and look at who we need to have a conversation with?
Can we, would it be possible to just as an action bring that back to the next meeting? So I'll take it offline, because I think if we can have, even if it's just a small set aside pot of money for collaborative work across LLR even, or Leicestershire or Leicester and Rutland, and then this senior officer group has officers from across LLR, and that can be the body that looks at where the proposals, what the proposals are into the OPCC. It just feels like a bit of a lost opportunity that every year there's massive underspends, but actually we know across LLR there are projects that would really benefit. Thank you, Chair.
I think we need to look at it, and it might just be, like you say, another budget line that's across the board, because what I don't want to do is every district have their own little thing and no one joins up, which is basically what's happening now. But if there are projects that sit across LLR, then we need to be using that money to for the benefit, don't we? So let's take it offline, but we'll have it definitely down as an action going to the next meeting to see where we've got with that, because I think it is a good point, Gurjit. Lee.
Yeah, apologies, Chair, for continuing this point, but it is frustrating to see underspends at this time of the financial year again, same as last year. One proposal I'd like to put forward is that this ring fencing of a pot for each district is only in place until the end of Q3, until the 31st of December, and then from the 1st of January, it's available for whatever district or the county to bid for, because I'm sat here as a local authority that has projects waiting to go, and we've spent our allocation, and we would very much like to get our hands on a little bit more money to do more in Charnwood.
Okay, I think we'll take this outside of the meeting, and Gurjit can do some work on this, and then we'll bring it back as an action from this meeting to next about how we progress this a little bit further. Okay, thank you for all your updates. Sad, thank you for coming. Okay, on to item 7, the antisocial behaviour system procurement, pages 13 to 18. So Gurjit, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I shall just quickly go through the presentation, which for some reason I can't share as a... Is that okay? Can people see that? Because my machine's being funny and won't let me share it properly. It won't go on presentation mode.
Oh, right. Yeah, now we can see it.
Okay. Right, so I'm just going to give an update on where we're at with the case management system procurement. So members will recall that we are looking basically to replace Sentinel. There was a review undertaken back in the summer or previous to the summer, a review of the current case management system, and members across LLR partnership, the ASB partnership, agreed that we should look for a new system, an updated system, looking at the ideal system for us. Partners requested that Leicestershire County Council lead that procurement. And in terms of funding for the first year, there's Home Office funding administered through the OPCC that's being used, and that needs to be spent by April 25. So lots of work being done today. And I must thank certainly the police, who have been amazing and really quick in responding to everything. Districts and boroughs, City, Rutland, everybody's really stepped up to get this work moving really quickly. So because Leicestershire County Council are leading the procurement, we've had to go through our kind of management procurement processes to ensure that it fits with our corporate procurement frameworks. We've decided to go through the government's G-Cloud system. So this is a system run by the government to procure ICT, a new ICT system. So it's a framework that Leicestershire County Council have used previously, and the police use it as well. So that's the system, the platform that we're using. And one of the reasons for that is because of the nature of the work and the system. In order to get onto G-Cloud, the provider has to undertake lots of checks and balances, which negates the need for the county council to do those checks and balances, because they've already been done, probably to a higher standard than we could ever do in the first place. So certainly because of the police systems and the data protection and sensitivity around the work, it's the best format to use for us. Vantage have now been advised that we're going through G-Cloud, and so Vantage is the provider for Sentinel at the minute. So they've been advised that we're using G-Cloud, and unfortunately they're not on the G-Cloud platform, so are not able to tender for the new system going forward. So in terms of progress today, as I say, the due diligence has been undertaken at Leicestershire County Council. A PID project initiation document has been delivered to our finance board. We've drafted and circulated a partnership agreement. A number of districts have come back with some queries and questions from their legal departments, as have the police. So I've got a meeting after this one today with Leicestershire County Council Legal Services to go through those comments and update and recirculate an updated document. What I've done in the meantime is, because we really want to award the document before we go on Christmas break, is ask for commitment from districts, boroughs, Rutland, City and the police, that they commit in writing that Leicestershire County Council will lead this work while we're awaiting the signed document. The information sharing agreement was taken to the Senior Information Management Group. That's been slightly amended and recirculated. I'm working on a memorandum of understanding, so that's for partners like Victim First, who have access to the case management system but aren't a part of it. So an MOU around their input and their work around it. We've had some testing of systems to look at what our ideal is. Looked at system interfaces. This is all very detailed, but just to give you a flavour of some of the work we've been doing, the police have already started looking at arranging training dates. So whoever the provider is, we've got dates in place, because there's a lot of police officers who will need to be trained up in it. And what we've decided to do is that training will be multi-agency. So there's going to be, it won't be individual agency training. We'll have multi-agency training, which I think is always the preferred choice when it's a multi-agency system. And I'm just working through the recruiting of the system partnership officer. So members will recall that everybody contributes towards this officer. So just looking to try and get that officer in post at the same time the new system's in place, so that we've got an officer who's going to embed and support a new system across the partnership. In terms of risks, we know, and this is a risk that was identified in the original business plan, the migration of data and how that goes across from Sentinel into the new system. We know that, for example, Lincolnshire had an issue with the migration of data because Sentinel gave it to each organisation on a spreadsheet, and then that had to be input manually. This is what we're trying to avoid, and this is really where the partnership agreement, it's important to get that signed and over the line as quickly as possible so that we can move forward with awarding the contract to the new provider, because that is going to be really resource intensive, tens of thousands of cases to be put on manually is going to be really resource intensive. And I think that's about where we're at the minute. So I have been onto the G Cloud system. We've got Sarita Adams, a consultant, supporting us with this work. So a member of my team, Sarita, and a member of ICT commissioning from Leicestershire County Council have been on to G Cloud. We've put in our keywords and what we want from our system, and we had a long list, and then we've got that down to a short list. So we have got a short list now, and as I say, I'm hopeful that next week, once I've got all the information back from partners across LLR, we can award that contract and then go on to actually procure it after the Christmas holidays. And that's the update today. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Gerd. It seems like it's progressing well. I know it's going to be a really big job when we actually get to implementing it and the training. Any questions from anybody? No? Okay. And obviously you'll come back to the board once you've got some further updates for us.
Yeah.
Okay, on to item 8, the Safer Communities Performance 2024-2025 quarter 2, pages 19 to 24. Back with you, Gurjit.
I was going to take the report as read and maybe just give a little bit of update, certainly around the MARAC. I think people will be, members will be aware that Safe Lives did a review of our MARAC processes. So we're doing a lot of work around that and how to strengthen the MARAC. So Safe Lives are working with the partnership around that. I know there are issues around funding, so the police, working with the police around some of that work. But other than that, I think there's not an awful lot to say on performance, unless there's any questions I can take away.
And obviously everyone's got the link there for them to drill down to their area if they need to as well. So I hope members are doing that. So the MARAC seems to be coming back down again. We had a bit of a blip, didn't we? But it is definitely coming down again now. And what I picked up as well, that crime seems to be reducing as well, and reoffending seems to be reducing. So it looks like we're going the same way. I think I particularly picked up about the serious violence as well. It's kind of not what you see in the news, but stats are saying that is starting to come down. So that could be the work. Well, it definitely is the work of the Violence Reduction Unit. In the work they're doing is finally becoming. Showing in the stats, isn't it? So really interesting to read that. So any questions from members on this report? No? Okay, thanks for that, Gurjit. Okay, on to item 9, the Violence Reduction Network. Is Bethany? Yeah, I can see Bethany. Pages 25 to 35. So over to you, Bethany.
Great, thank you, Chair. Morning, everyone. I think I've met most people on the call before, but I'm Beth and I'm the Strategic Data and Insights Manager at the Violence Reduction Network. And I'm really pleased to be here today to provide a bit of an update on the work of the VRN over the last 12 to 18 months. So hopefully board members will have had the chance to look through the document, but we'll kind of go through each page and just pick out some of the key updates, and then obviously welcome any kind of queries or comments towards the end. So firstly, you'll have hopefully picked up through various platforms and meetings that the VRN celebrated its 5th anniversary in September this year. So that was a really great opportunity for us to reflect on the work of the partnership and the progress that's been made over the last 5 years. And positively, as we've just mentioned, we are starting to see that work translate into our performance data. And I will talk through a slide of that in a moment. Another key part of this year, or kind of the last 12 to 18 months, was a serious violence legal duty that came into force in 2023. So there was a lot of activity during that 12-month implementation period, particularly involving CSPs, and continues to do so. And then linked to that, we've also developed a new 5-year preventing serious violence strategy. So again, I'll go through that in a little bit more detail as we go along. So as we've mentioned, we are starting to see some of the impact of our work through the data, particularly in relation to our priority focus of under 25s and public place violence. So the data on the slide here was based on the last financial year. And just to note that this was based on our previous definition, so hopefully partners will be aware that in line with the duty, the partnership agreed on a broader definition of violence last year. So that includes now domestic abuse as well as sexual violence. But at the time of the financial year ending, we were working up to our previous definition. So that's what these figures are based on. But I think it is really positive that we have seen those decreases across both our police as well as our health data sets, either when focusing on kind of high level monitoring data, but also down to our success measures as well. And then very recently, we have updated our annual strategic needs assessment. So this is currently out for sign off, but will hopefully be ready to be circulated in late January. But through the analysis through that report, we can see that based on our new definition, we have seen quite notable and sustained decreases over the last 12 to 18 months when we look at all serious violence, but actually consistently across the themes as well. So domestic abuse, sexual violence, and our priority focus of public place, as well as violence involving young people, have all seen decreases of around kind of 10 to 15% across the last 12 months. So again, really positive that that has continued into this year. Just to touch on the duty quite briefly, as I mentioned, this came into force in January of 23, and duty holders had 12 months to meet the initial requirements. You'll probably be aware that positively, before the duty came into place, there was an independent readiness assessment of our area, which concluded that as a partnership, we were mature, demonstrating best practice, and that was the highest rating that was available. So that really kind of emphasised the strength of our partnership working to date. So actually, before we kind of came into the duty, we had come from a real place of strength. And I think everyone on the call has worked really closely with us on this and really continues to do so, particularly through the additional serious violence duty team. So lots of co-production work has happened throughout that period. We've had the revised definition and then the development of a new SNA and strategy. So we met the requirements early, actually, and really efficiently locally. So through this work, we did publish our strategy, which again, hopefully everyone is familiar with. So I won't go through it in any detail, but it is on our website if people did want to review anything within there. But through this, we formed 7 evidence-based priorities, which were key to driving that system-wide prevention activity. So all of these areas underpin everything that we do as a VRN partnership, we just need to ensure that we're always aligned with them. So based on that, we formed our delivery plan for this financial year. And we've been reviewing that more recently, and we have made significant progress across a lot of areas in that plan. As we have updated our SNA in the last few weeks, next quarter we will be updating and reviewing our strategy, ensuring as well that we incorporate kind of new directions of travel in relation to some of the new government priorities and the Safer Streets mission. So again, we will keep partners up to date as that progresses, and we will be coming out for some consultation as well. So wider than our duty holders, there's also been a lot of activity around our wider partnership this year, so particularly involving communities and young people. We really feel like that work has gone from strength to strength every year, and we continue to collaborate and co-produce really effectively with our community partners. So you'll see a lot of the activity listed there, but some of them around kind of the implementation of our new community partnership framework, which hopefully you'll all be aware of, investment in a 4th cohort of the community leadership programme with the OPCC. We've developed and kind of implemented a 2nd cohort of our community oversight group. So they're there to provide support, advice and scrutiny to all aspects of the VRN's work. We held a 2nd Hope Pack with over 120 young people. And also this year we have piloted a fire skills programme with the fire service and hopefully rolling that out more widely. Linked to that, we've also formed a collaboration with Street Games and Active Together. So that's there to really strengthen and develop our sports sector locally. And we have invested in a sports and violence coordinator who you've probably met, Megan Spinks, who's really driving that work for us locally. And then finally here, just over 12 months ago, we had our Trauma Informed conference. So that was really well attended. And kind of since then, and obviously before then as well, there's been a lot of ongoing support around the development of policies and procedures around Trauma Informed, as well as the development of 2 professional networks. So lots of partnership activity continues to go on there. So looking at our interventions, we continue to see a really positive reach and outcomes across all of our interventions. So we've got the REACH programme, which successfully passed the efficacy stage of the evaluation and has currently got funding up until June of 2025. Our Navigator programme VIP continues to provide reach and support in A&E and custody, and that is currently being externally evaluated. So we will have a report due in Q4. But I think a real kind of achievement and highlight for the partnership over the last year is the launch of the Phoenix programme. So that is a real multi-agency, community-focused team. So that's working with the police, probation and youth justice, as well as a team of community navigators. So the programme works with those who are involved in violence, particularly kind of network activity, and it offers that tailored, tangible, swift support to prevent that further involvement in violence. But as this is based on the focused deterrence model, there is also a kind of consequence enforcement element to that programme where there is that lack of engagement. So it's a new programme nationally, to be honest. We were one of 5 sites at the time to be awarded the funding. And again, this is another programme of ours that is being really closely evaluated kind of externally and independently. Locally, we've been monitoring it, the delivery over the last year, and we are seeing a number of reductions on individuals offending, as well as them kind of receiving some of those wider positive outcomes as well. So a real kind of quite a highlight for us was the Phoenix programme this year. And then looking at campaigns, so a notable one for us continues to be the Live Safe website. So we've had a number of developments this year around translating the website, new imagery, we've got quarterly hot topics, and more recently we have had the development of a professionals page, which is being launched really soon, as well as the rollout of some parent care and knife crime workshops, which again will be delivered and open kind of next month onwards. And then another one to note, I think everyone will have been involved in at some point, is our community-based campaign as part of the Serious Finance Duty. So we had a number of co-production events, either with partners or communities. And this week we have evaluated the tenders ready to award a successful creative agency. So they'll be kind of continuing to lead this work into Q4. And again, I'm sure through Shamira's role, she'll continue to keep everyone updated on a local level. And then finally, just to touch on our data evidence and evaluation work. So I've mentioned a lot of this throughout, but key areas really around us kind of having that robust evaluation across a number of our interventions, particularly the 2 which are subject to a randomised control trial. And then we've also commissioned or kind of done locally a number of pieces of research or reports, which you'll see listed there. And generally, we do continue to develop our access to and use of data within the partnership. So we're always trying to improve our collective understanding of violence. And we have got a number of plans which we're hoping to achieve into next year as well. So that's everything from me. I appreciate a really quick update on 18 months of work, but hopefully that provides a bit of an overview of some of those key activities. And we will be producing our annual report towards the end of Q4. So again, we can circulate that again for a bit of a more up-to-date update. So welcome any questions or comments, or happy to take anything offline as well.
Thanks, Bethany. Really good report. Thank you very much for coming and delivering that to us. Is there any questions on this update from anybody? Gurjit.
Thank you. Thanks, Beth. That was a great presentation as ever. Just a note really, and I know we were planning to meet and then for whatever reasons it didn't happen, so maybe we can revisit it. I think in light of the definition now also incorporating domestic abuse, it'd be really useful to have some conversations around some of that data and how we link into the work that's already underway across Leicestershire and Rutland. We've just had our needs assessment through, which I'll share with you for Leicestershire around domestic abuse. But I think maybe when you've had a chance to look at it, we have a conversation about how we can work together around that domestic abuse element of the definition that the VRN has adopted.
Yeah, definitely. Really happy to pick that up. And we're also doing some wider work with SBB as well around kind of some of that data across a lot of those priority strands, which obviously domestic abuse is part of. So yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you. And Wendy?
Mine's not really a question, it's just more of an observation really, because I think the work of the VRN just has shown really some great partnership working, and it's lovely to see the outcomes that come into fruition really. So I just want to thank you and the rest of the team, because I think you've done a fantastic job, and probably I feel anyway that we've done more because of the VRN than we could have done individually in our own organisations.
Absolutely, it's definitely brought lots of us together in one place, and yes. I know Grace has been leading this really, really well. So yeah, no, I'm just checking. Do we know any more about funding for the VRN? Have we got any update on that?
We don't at the moment. We attended a conference, the directors event in Cardiff last week, where we're hoping to get a little bit more information, but nothing is confirmed as of yet. We have had a little bit more around kind of prevention partnerships and young futures in the youth hubs, but at the moment we haven't got anything. We're hoping that it will be coming out imminently, hopefully definitely before Christmas, but we were anticipating something this week.
Okay, so you're funded to next year, is it, or have you still got
March 2025? So we're in a position at the moment where the PCC has kind of covered the team, so we will have the team on permanent contracts, but unfortunately the issue is more around quite a big chunk of our funding which goes towards our intervention. So at the moment we're really trying to kind of ensure we're supporting them and hoping that we'll hear some news quite soon.
Okay, I'm not whether it comes out next week in the local government settlement or whether it's connected to the police funding, which we probably won't hear till the new year, but it leaves us in a really difficult position, doesn't it, at the minute, not knowing how we're going to end up going forward. So let's hope we get some funding for it. Okay, thank you, Bethany. I can't see any more questions for you. Thank you for coming and presenting. Okay, on to the item 10, domestic homicide review partnership, pages 35 to 46. Over to you again, Gurjit.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take the paper as read, but just to pull out some key points. Partners will be aware that the DHR were established on a statutory basis back in 2004. And that locally, what the way we work around that statute is that funding comes in from each of the districts and boroughs and into the safeguarding board at Leicestershire County Council, and then Leicestershire County Council undertake those reviews in partnership with the CSP chair. So there's been a review of that process recently, and it's kind of been rewritten and taken forward that way. So one of the issues that has come to light as more and more, unfortunately, domestic homicide reviews are worked through, is that when recommendations come out of those reviews, if it's a one agency recommendation, they are moved forward and actioned relatively straight in a straightforward manner. However, when it's a partnership action, it's far more difficult to drive them forward, and there's no dedicated officer to support the driving forward of those actions. So we put a number of proposals forward to the senior officer group where the LLR senior officers come together. And the preferred option was that the safeguarding board recruit an officer specifically around those DHRs to drive some of those actions forward and pick up the learning from the DHRs. So that's what we've done. The job description is attached. We interviewed last week or the week before, and we've got a really amazing candidate. So really excited about her starting. Her name is Holly. So she'll be in post for the next meeting, so we'll I'll ask her to come along and maybe give an introduction to her. So she'll be working with the safeguarding board when there's a domestic homicide review. She'll be involved in from the start in those reviews, pick up all the learning, pick up the recommendations, and then work with partners in embedding them. Previous to this meeting, we had the Domestic Abuse Local Partnership Board, and I think we talked about lots of work, Project Echo around authentic voice. We talked about the MHCLG commissioning, the strategic needs assessment. It's all very much interlinked. So really excited that actually this officer is going to bring a lot to the partnership, and we'll be able to drive forward lots of that learning alongside the survivor voice, and which will enable us to really provide better services for victims and families of domestic abuse. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Gertrude. I think this has been a concern for a long time, isn't it, that we get the recommendations, but where do they sit and who follows up on those to make sure they're embedded that we need to do? Will this cover sort of national reviews as well that continue? So there are sometimes national reviews that come out with learning, don't they? So will that post cover those as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's a new post, so we can really mould it for our purposes locally. I think it will. I think it will pick up that learning from national reviews and bring it, and we can learn from those and see how we embed them locally. The other thing that I omitted to say is that in terms of the governance of recommendations and actions from reviews, they now will sit with the LLR, Domestic Abuse Sexual Violence Board, that sits under the Strategic Partnership Board. So and that's across LLR. So the action is a standing agenda item. So I think, you know, with the officer and that governance, we've kind of got it covered now, hopefully. So it is a pilot for a year. So we'll keep the board updated on how that progresses, and if there's any plans to continue that, then obviously we'll bring it back here.
Thanks, Gertrude. Any other questions from anybody? I think it's a really good move forward for us, so thank you for that. Okay, onto item 11, right to care, right to person approach, pages 47 to 52. Is Dwight online?
I am. Good morning. Just got a lot of noise in the background. I'm just trying to get that quietened a bit before I start talking. Yeah.
Good to see you. Speak to you again, Dwight.
Yes.
From the past.
Nice to see you as well. Nice to see so many familiar names on the meeting invite. Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Chair, for this presentation. I've expanded the right care, right person just with a bit of an update on Leicestershire Police. I hope that's in order, and if this doesn't cover what you wanted covering, then please let me know. Can you hear me okay, because my whole screen's frozen?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Okay, good. Okay, so in relation to right care, right person, it's something that's been underway for quite a while within Force. We're actually quite ahead of the curve in relation to this, because we've been doing things within Force for a significant period of time to try and take the best agency approach. So I know that this is a government phrase at the moment and something that's been rolled out in other areas prior to here, but with things like our mental health car, where we triage mental health incidents that we've had for 10 years or such, a lot of the big changes that other forces are seeing, we're not seeing in Leicestershire because we were already doing it. That being said, there's been a significant change project, certainly over the last year, that we're now entering phase 4 of, looking at what we're doing, why we're doing it, and whether or not we are the right agency to be dealing with that. So phase one, as you can see there, started with the correct process in relation to people going AWOL from mental health establishments, and what our duty and obligation was in relation to that. That was then expanded to wider healthcare and concerns for welfare of people predominantly leaving the LRI. Phase 3 was a review of how we use our mental health powers. Just excuse me 1 minute. Sorry. And then we're now looking at transportation, predominantly in relation to mental health, but also in relation to difficulties that the ambulance service are facing, and how we often find ourselves transporting people to the hospital when we're not the right agency and we do not have that level of first aid training. So in relation to the impact that's had, you've got some figures there in the bottom left hand corner of the screen. 22-23 number of incidents that we assessed that we weren't the correct agency for was 21,000, which is astonishingly high, and then you can see that that's gradually been coming down over the last few years. For us, that is 12 incidents every day that we're not attending because we're not the right agency in relation to dealing with that. That's the only slide I've got, Chair, in relation to right care, right person, and it isn't actually my area of business. But shall I pause there if anyone's got any particular questions about that before I move on?
Yeah, there's no hands going up at the moment, so you're okay to carry on. Good to see the incidents coming down.
Yeah, it certainly is. Thank you. So moving on, obviously, I think everyone's aware that we've recently undergone the HMIC FRS inspection, and those results have been published. I think all forces at the moment feel a bit underwhelmed by the reports we're all getting, because we've all definitely shifted down towards that inadequate end. It might surprise some people to know that actually, even though we appear to have shifted, our report's still in the top 4 or 5 in the country in relation to our assessment from the HMIC FRS, which we're really proud of. That being said, there's a couple of areas that we do need to improve, and they are areas that we already had in hand and plans in place for. So next few slides that are in the pack, I'm sure people have had a chance to have a look at them. Just a bit of a recap in 3 key areas, what we've done over the last year and what we're still working on. So we have done Op Forefront that others may have heard of, where we've strengthened our neighbourhood policing model and made all our responses neighbourhood aligned, which is the first time we've done that in a number of years. We've created that prevention directorate, so doing a lot of work in that prevention space, which has really been recognised nationally, and one of the really strong things from the HMI report. Some of you will be aware of what we're trying to do in that engagement space with the IAGs, SIAGs, LPACs. Problem management, again, under that prevention has been a really positive thing that we've tried to build on over the last year and bring in a problem management approach across the organisation. So we're taking every opportunity to manage a problem out and prevent it happening again. Some specialist teams created, and then obviously those purposeful partnerships with mental health and right care, right person, which I've already mentioned. What we're looking at for the year going forward is actually we're cognizant that a lot of the improvements we've made has been to the detriment of our neighbourhood police officers who filled that gap for capacity. We're committed to a neighbourhood model. We've never wavered from that. And it's nice to see that the government is pushing in the same direction. Obviously, the difficulty with that is that's where we find some of our capacity to do some of the other stuff. So we're trying to make sure we fully understand how often we're taking officers away from the neighbourhoods they're supposed to be working in, and then coming up with plans to try and minimise that. The next one, it's a key problem for us, and I'm sure you've all heard it mentioned before. The number of experienced people we've had retire and the churn of new people coming in is huge. We've got an awfully inexperienced frontline, the people that are responding and investigating the volume crime space, and actually we've now got quite an inexperienced band of sergeants supervising them. So it's not just the new people, the new PCs, it's their supervisors as well. So we're having to do an awful lot of work to give them all the skills and reference material they need to be able to do their job effectively. And then linked to all the things that have been on the agenda today, we're looking at what we can do to strengthen how we record and deal with antisocial behaviour. So there are 3 priorities in that prevention space that we're looking at over the next year. One of our AFIs was in relation to responding to the public. We have introduced the policing pledge in the last year, which we're now trying to work towards. We've made some great gains actually in our contact performance and have reduced how quickly we're answering the 101s in particular. I'm hoping people on the call, should they have had the ill fortune to need to call 101, got a better response than maybe 2 or 3 years ago when people were waiting for horrendous amounts of time for us to answer that. We've brought in a new governance structure that's helping our public contact strategy, and then we've got a number of campaigns that we're trying to encourage the public to free up time and report to us in the most effective manner. Work in progress is, we recognise that those calls that we're trying to respond to that aren't emergencies but are still priorities, we're not where we want to be in relation to that, and we've run projects over the last year to try and improve that over the summer, and now we want to take the learning we've had from those projects and apply that all the time. So we are attending those less than emergencies slightly quicker. We're trying to maintain the call handling improvements we've had whilst reducing the additional funding we've put in there and make that business as usual and be more effective in that space. We're looking at particularly at those that cause a lot of demand or a repeat because of their individual circumstances. So we've got a big focus on repeat victims over the next year and what we can do in relation to crime prevention advice to help them help themselves. And then one of the areas that the HMI have asked us to look at is giving out better advice in relation to securing and preserving evidence. So we've got the best chance of a prosecution when we do attend. And then finally from me, just in relation to the vulnerable people, we've got a clear vulnerability strategy, which has been reviewed over the last year, and delivery plans backing that up. The VRN has already been on, so I'm not going to go over that again. We've got a lot of investment in specialist teams, so we're giving the best possible service we can to victims and vulnerable people in that space. Again, we've built on our performance framework to make sure we're delivering that. We've got a country leading domestic abuse resolution team that's seen as best practice. We've introduced here to triage calls over the phone and also to identify significant threat in domestic situations and put a bespoke response behind that, moving back into the prevention space, and also to prioritise our response to those relationships that have got all the hallmarks of toxicity and danger. Opsiteria you may have heard of, so that work has already started. That will actually carry on through this year to ensure we're giving the best service we can to victims of rape and sexual assault. And as ever, domestic abuse remains one of our main priorities for the force. So a lot of the work in this area is actually to maintain all the good work we've already done, and we're looking to make sure that with other changes we have to make, the work in this area doesn't get degraded. Suspect management, we've got a lot of focus on that this year to see how effective we can be at arresting those that are outstanding and need it. And as ever, making sure that all the partnership work we're doing in this space continues to be enhanced and deliver the best service across all partners. And that's the Leicestershire Police update for this, unless anyone's got any questions.
Thanks, Dwight. Any questions or comments from anybody? Jim?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, thanks for that. It's really, really informative. Can you hear me all right? Is it coming through okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent. Yeah, just in terms of the sort of the non-emergency calls and the sort of, obviously, you know, it has been an area of concern within the force, and I just really wanted to know sort of, do you still have problems with sort of retention of call handlers in terms of that, and what's been the major drive that's helped to improve that?
Some of it has been around staffing. a lot of it has been around making sure that people are using the most appropriate method of contacting us. So there's been a big shift to making reports online rather than doing it through a person. We've looked at all the reasons that people do call in, and actually a lot of the time those lines were getting really blocked up with people that just want an update in relation to their crime. So all officers have been given mobile phones that they should be giving their personal number out so they can get their direct contact rather than through 101. So yes, staffing is part of it. Retention does continue to be a problem, but actually by looking at what is coming in and blocking up those lines to prevent those people that do need to speak to us actually being able to speak to us is one of the things that's made a big difference, and we're looking to improve that even further as we go forward.
And what are the sort of, do you sort of have data on the sort of waiting time for people getting through to you on the 101?
So the way that we monitor that is we look at how many people don't get a call answered within the 20 minutes, and that's now less than 20%. So most calls, a vast majority of calls, are answered within 20 minutes, which I'm sure is still longer than most people would want to wait, but is a vast improvement on where we found ourselves a few years ago.
Okay, lovely. Thanks ever so much for that.
No problem.
All those stats, Jim, come through the police and crime panel. So the PCC bring us all those all that data through to us so we can scrutinise it at the police and crime panel. So we do keep a close eye on that. And I think, especially for me personally, I report quite a lot within my area of things that need reporting. I tend to do it online. I get a really quick email back, to be honest, from reporting on online than I did from calling 101. So I very rarely call that now. I just do everything online, and they come back with me with an email of what they've done, or if there's no further action, or just to thank me for putting that through. So for me, online is much quicker for myself and to get a response. There is a issue that the police and crime panel are looking at, is the dropout of the online reporting, because it is quite a lot of questions to go through. So they are keen to look at, and I don't think the police have quite been able to get that data off for us yet, about how many people drop off when they're reporting online, because I think that's a key thing as well. If people are, we can do when they're dropping off the phone calls, but we can't see when they're dropping off online reporting. So I think that's a key going forward as well for us to monitor. Okay, any other questions from anybody or comments? No. Okay, thanks for coming and presenting to us.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to item 12, the mental health treatment requirement. Andrea, I've got down here presenting from Turning Point.
I can't see her online.
Okay.
She did accept my invite, so I don't quite know what's happened.
And we have got some slides, haven't we, in our pack as well. Well, if she's not here to present, then we can't really.
No, we might have to just postpone it to the next meeting.
This. Okay, we'll have to postpone that then. Okay, item 13, any other business? I've not been made aware of any other business. And the date of the next meeting is on Friday, the 28th of March at 10 o'clock. So on that note, I'll bring the meeting to an end and wish you all a happy Christmas, and I'll see you all in the new year. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Happy Christmas, everybody.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, everyone. Cheers. Bye now.